You're listening to the Diagnosed Podcast, where every diagnosis has a story, and every story deserves to be heard. From survivors to loved ones, we explore the journey together with your host, Albano.
I'm actually looking forward to this conversation because we've been shooting the shit about dogs for, man, it's got to be close to 30 years. So to do it on a different level here, talking about a few different things than we would normally talk about is pretty interesting for me.
Good. This is awesome.
It's funny because we actually met through dogs. So it's pretty interesting that all these years later, we're sitting here. It's a full circle. So anyway, let's get into it because I have a few things that I definitely want to talk about. So for a quick introduction, we're here with Tony Pallotta from Working Canine, and Tony and I have been friends for the better part of 30 years, I would imagine, 28, 30 years when we first met, something like that.
Yep.
And it was actually, again, like we were just mentioning, it actually started with dogs. I had my American Bulldogs and you had your Shepherd, and that's how we kind of got introduced to each other.
Absolutely.
Tony, why don't you first quickly tell us what you do at Working Canine, because I want to lay a little bit of that I guess, understanding, based on the conversations that we're going to be having today. I want to put a little bit of context to what it is that you do and you specialize at Working Canine on a day-to-day.
Sure. So we own a dog training facility called Working Canine. Typically what we do is we offer civilian dog training, but we also have a law enforcement program that trains dogs from very young age of 10 to 12 weeks of age. And we raise dogs to train them for law enforcement purposes. So we do everything from narcotics detection, explosives detection, tracking, evidence article detection and location, obedience, and handler protection or apprehension work. And above and beyond that, our civilian program assists local handlers, dog owners in achieving responsible dog ownership, obedience training their dog, just general helping people get a better handle on their dog. And in recent years, we've expanded the program to do several other things. In the detection world, we're training dogs to find invasive species of insects and invasive species of aquatic animals that are finding their way through our river systems and coming across the border through other various means. And the other thing that we started doing is, well, we've been doing this for a while, is helping or training dogs for people who have been diagnosed with one disease or the other, in a wide range of assistance scenarios for people. Dogs are very capable of many things, ranging from, detecting certain chemical changes in people, to physically assisting them. So we've been working civilian service dogs for a while, and I really, really appreciate what dogs can do for people. And ironically enough, we're working dogs that are helping people who've been diagnosed with something. So there's many different types of assistance that we do, but we can get into the individual requirements of each as we go through this conversation for sure.
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to put out there right off the bat, because obviously I've known you for so long and I've watched you from the beginning of your dog training experience as a dog owner to your development with dogs. The one thing I wanted to get out there right off the bat is, in my personal opinion, I believe that you're one of the best dog trainers anywhere. When it comes to the knowledge of the dog, the breeds, philosophy on the dogs, and how to get the most out of the dogs. I mean, I've seen it over the years, and through personal experience, me being, an enthusiast and a hobby dog owner, let's say, over the years, and being involved in different aspects of whether it's breeding or training or obedience or whatever it is. You've really taken this to another level, and I want people to understand that when we talk about you dog training, this is not just something that you do on the side. I mean, you're professional at it. I think that I've mentioned this to you before, but I think that one of the things that sets you apart from most other dog trainers that I've either come across or encountered online is that it's your openness and willingness to be humble all the time, to learn. I don't think that I think dog training is an art, not a science, and it's constantly evolving. It's never settled. And I think you're a perfect example of that definition of it being an art, not a science, because you're constantly either adapting new philosophies or creating your own or figuring out what works. And I just wanted to put that out there so the audience and people put in perspective the quality that you're putting out there.
Well, I really appreciate that, and that means a lot. I do believe in being humble in this industry for one specific reason. I don't believe that the Bible of dog training has been written yet. I think that we're constantly pushing the envelope of what these dogs are able to do. We're seeing on a regular basis, new philosophies coming out. Some that complement old techniques and philosophies, and some that sort of leave certain things behind and evolve and advance. So, it's amazing to see, like, who would have thought that, 30 years ago, a dog would be able to detect cancer on somebody's breath or mold behind a wall or, things like that. So it's amazing to see. And I got to be honest with you, I learn as much from the dogs as they learn from me. And, I think that's why I'm consistently trying to improve my understanding of what they're capable of, because it seems like it's never ending surprise as to their capabilities, whether it be physical or through their olfactory system and how they help people. I always say you get the dog you need, not the dog you want. And I've seen it too many times to believe that this doesn't happen for a reason.
Yeah. The one thing that I find fascinating, and probably the older I get, the more I'm seeing it, and even right here close to home with my wife, and that's so obviously we have a little dog at home, and she's never been a dog person, but the relationship that she's been able to create with our little dog, I mean, she just loves this little guy. I mean, Indy, and
Yep.
I mean, she loves him, like she really loves him, and she's not a dog person. And that's one thing that for me, myself, that I've really started to put my finger on is the relationship between human and dog. It's something that even being involved with dogs over the years, whether they were pets or we were doing obedience or shows or whatever it was, I just never really made that connection of the relationship beyond what you're asking the dog to do. I'm talking about the emotional connection. I'm talking about, just that. And it goes both ways. Like, I think the dog obviously feels it, and then, humans pick that up as well. And obviously, I think, you probably see that a lot more than me because you deal with a lot more people than I do. But having said that, what's coming to mind right now for me is you've had people come through your facility not as should I put this? They're not there as clients, but you've taken in people who are co-op students. You've
Yep.
taken in people who, came in as a student through a co-op or through a different program as co-op students, and pretty sure that I know of one or two instances or stories that people have come in and almost unexpectedly, it's changed their life.
100%. 100%. I've seen it more than just a few occasions. You're right. We do have volunteers. We have local high schools that send us kids that don't have a direction in life, or they want to get into law enforcement, or they want to get into veterinary care, anything like that. And sometimes they end up here for various reasons, but the benefit that these dogs have generated um, in so many different ways with just the people that I've personally worked with, things like social anxiety disorder, things like just straight out anxiety over just stress inducers, um, people who need dogs to settle their mind because they've come up through a an incident in their life that's created PTSD and things of that nature. I've seen it so many times where these dogs, and you know I think it, some people may think it's silly, but I truly believe that dogs are angels, and dogs sacrifice themselves for the need of the person that needs them. I've seen it so many times that I can't. I'm not an overtly religious person, but I believe in a higher power, and I believe that these dogs provide a service that is just unbelievable. It's statistically been proven that an untrained dog is just as valuable to somebody who needs a dog for therapy than a service dog. I mean, there are breeds that have been established for centuries, small breeds, the Shih Tzu, the Pekingese, these little companion dogs that create such an emotional attachment with without a lot of the sad components that people unfortunately experience in life, when whether it be a family member that gets sick or a child that gets sick, and are faced with these things where you know these dogs, they just give this un undying devotion and companionship, which is these lap dogs. They've been developed as lap dogs for centuries. The Chinese have had so many lap dogs that have changed people through and through, leaders of emperors and leaders of countries and armies. These little dogs just give, just the amount of compassion that humans generate for these little guys. And speaking to your wife and the little dog Indy, I mean, I've seen it so many times, and there's so many different ways that dogs help people, whether it be, therapy, whether it be physical assistance, whether it be seeing eye dogs. But as far as as you mentioned earlier, the bond, most of the little dogs create the biggest sort of responses in human emotion than anything. And we look
Have
at them
you,
and they're like, what are they like? What do these little dogs do? They're just little yappy dogs, and yet they generate the biggest amount of emotional contact and commitment from people, more so than they experience with humans.
and I think that my wife tells Indy that she loves him more than she tells me. I mean, she just, for whatever reason, I'm not sure how she got so bonded to this dog, but he's on the bed. He's all over. She goes to take a nap. He's there. I mean, it's unreal. There's something called the oxytocin loop, or oxytocin, that is released
Yep.
uh, in humans and the dogs,
100%.
through interaction, right? Like people interacting with dogs. It's been scientifically proven
Yes.
that it elevates. Yeah.
Yes. So think of just this one small detail. So I look at it like humans were originally hunter gatherers, right? And dogs descend from wolves being hunter scavengers, and it's pretty close to the same thing. And it's funny that of all the animals that we have um, privy to us, the dog seems to be the one that fits into the structure of the family the best, more than anyone. I mean, cats are cool too. I'm not a cat person. I love cats. I just not my thing. But dogs tend to follow the same hierarchy of status in a home than humans do. So, you have your for, husband, you have your wife, you have your kids, you have that structure, that family structure. Well, in the wolf pack, you have the alpha male, you have the alpha female, which are typically the parents of the siblings of the rest of the wolves within that pack. They're all related. And that structure is very similar to the human structure. And it's amazing how we tend to amalgamate these two species, both human and dog, and we get along so well because we're more similar than we are different. I mean, even many of the medications that we use are the same medications that dogs would use. So I guess we're both mammals, but the structure and the hierarchy of the pack versus the structure and hierarchy of the family is very, very similar. So that's probably one of the reasons why we have such a strong bond with them.
Yeah, there was one time that I was online and I was just whatever looking up dog stuff, and it takes you, obviously, when you're online and you look up something, something else pops up and it takes you down this rabbit hole and you kind of dive into all these different things. And um, I remember, I'm not going to probably, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of it, but I thought that man and dog, the connection, was more of a recent thing. I'm not talking about working dogs, because working dogs have been working on farms and whatever for many years. A lot of these breeds were created for working purposes, whatever those purposes were in whatever country you were in. But what I found was something called, and you may have heard of it or not, because this was way back. They found about 14,000 years ago, they found the first, so it was in a coffin or something like that they dug up, the first dog buried with a human in Germany
Yes.
14,000 years ago.
Mm.
You have you heard of something like that?
I thought it was Belgium, but I mean, yeah, in that area there for sure.
Could be both, but
Yep.
like the one that I saw, I
100%.
think was in Germany, Bonn, Oberkassen, or something like that.
Yep.
But I found it amazing that, I mean, we're talking 14,000 years ago.
I would venture to say it goes back even further. We just haven't located, the artifacts that can prove it. But I would venture to say even sooner, even before that.
Yeah, that's amazing
Yep.
that,
100%.
that they were having an impact that long ago, that people were getting buried with their dogs.
Yep. Yep. 100%. No, there's no question. And that goes to the domestication of the wolf, and how these wolves were actually um helping humans when they were actually a, I don't want to say a source of food, but the initial interaction between humans and wolves, whenever a predator has other predators that are in their environment which sustain them, they often fight with them to run them off so that they're not tapping into their food source. So I think during the domestication process of wolves, wolf puppies were taken in and raised and potentially used for food. There are still cultures today that eat dog. We know that natives used dogs to pull sleds and were beasts of burden. But if they found themselves in a pickle, it wasn't uncommon. But I think that the dogs proved their worth beyond beasts of burden or food sources, or wolves proved themselves. And the domestication process of dogs, I think, really developed around what many believe were the campfire, where these wolves that were taken in were sensing threats, whether it be bears, mountain lions, other tribes that were attacking in the night. And these pups would sense this danger and alert in the only way they knew how, through growling or snarling or, showing some type of aggression. And when they were able to preempt a potential attack by warning these people, these early humans, they started to realize their value and their worth beyond just beasts of burden and beyond a food source, and started to realize their benefits. And the ones that were easily molded to stay with humans were kept and bred, and the ones that were very suspicious of all humans, including their masters, they were eliminated. And I think that created the domestication process. We can still breed dogs to wolves. We can still feed, raw meat to wolves. We can still feed raw meat to dogs. They're anatomically still very similar. So it's the assistance aspect of the wolf that lended itself to the domestication process. And now that has led us to, even like, I mean, that's way back, but going into how these dogs have been helping humans, yeah, way before 14,000 years ago, for sure. Absolutely.
You mentioned the natives and sledding. Do they still do is it called the Iditarod? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, they do.
Is that
And
still a thing?
yeah, it's still a thing. And they've hybridized dogs. It's not purebred huskies anymore that are running these things, because it's a competition, and competition clearly evolves, um, you know, animals and people to extremes. So, yeah, they still do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. If anybody's never heard of it, I think it's definitely worth looking up, because I mean they go pretty intense, and it's a multi-day thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. It's quite an extreme thing. But the dogs have been modified and hybridized and bred for running. So there's the traditional husky, Samoyed, Alaskan Malamute are almost rarely ever used in competition. But as far as like the utilitarian aspect of the dog, I mean, yeah, there's so many breeds that have been assisting humans survive in all different types of environments. And now, even so, in rural city, metropolis environments, where they're still doing phenomenal work,
Yeah,
especially through the olfactory system of the dogs. I mean, the sense of smell is beyond comprehension. They can almost see with their nose. It's that incredible. We had a conservation authority here. We're training a dog to find invasive species of insect eggs. I mean, can you imagine fly eggs, and a dog being able to smell a batch of fly eggs in a canopy of trees 70 to 100 feet away? I mean, that's incredible. It's just the thought of a dog being able to identify not any fly egg, like specific fly eggs, spotted lanternfly or hemlock woolly adelgid. These are minuscule little eggs that you would have trouble seeing the larvae when they hatch. And this dog is locating it, from hundreds of feet away in the wind. It's mind-boggling.
where are these invasive species of eggs? Are they in the water?
So the eggs are actually on trees, and some of them will actually lay them on hard surfaces, like abrasive surfaces like bark, or even the shingles in on your roof. So yeah, it's pretty wild. We actually are also training this particular dog to find invasive species of crayfish that have worked their way through the water supply. But yeah, the sense of smell is incredible. But I really am looking forward to talking to you about how dogs are actually working on the medical side of things with people who have actually been diagnosed with certain diseases.
Well, let's get into that then. Uh,
Perfect.
we actually we had on a couple of times now. I've had on Dr. Saif Samir, and we talked a lot about diabetes. And I know that dogs are working; they're able to detect diabetes
Yes.
in people. So, can you tell us or tell me a little bit about that, how that works, and have you
Yeah.
had any experience with that yourself?
So, yeah, so not diabetes per se, but so the dogs can detect chemical changes in humans. They can smell it. You know how often you hear that dogs can smell fear? People say that dogs can
Yeah.
smell fear. What's actually happening is the dogs are being able to sense the byproduct of the concept of fear, which is adrenaline spikes. So dogs can smell the chemical changes in the body when people get nervous. They're almost very much like a lie detector. We have this young lady that's with us that's we're training one of her dogs, and she has or she gets anaphylactic allergic responses, but it's idiopathic. They don't know what's causing it, but she's having these episodes of anaphylactic shock or response, and they don't know what's causing it, but she has to have EpiPens nearby all the time. So what we're doing is we're taking cotton swabs, and she's swabbing her skin while she's in the pre stage of awareness of having this anaphylactic shock. She can tell that it's coming on, but when she senses it's coming on, she only has a very short window of time before she can um, get an EpiPen into her and call 911. So what we're doing is we're taking skin swabs of when she's having this anaphylactic response, and then we're taking skin swabs or cotton swabs of normal times. And we're teaching this dog that when we present these swabs pre-anaphylactic shock, the dog has to bark and start barking, without command. And when we present the swabs that don't have the anaphylactic response, the dogs are not allowed to bark. And through this barking mechanism, the dog is now indicating when the presence of this pre anaphylactic episode is occurring. Um, Epileptic seizures, for instance. Dogs are able to sense the chemical changes before there's a physical change in the body. So, being able to identify these changes or even just respond to them. So some people have epileptic seizures that don't cause episodes of convulsion. They just pass out. So having a service dog that remains close with a identification card on the harness that will instruct that this person is epileptic, and you know call 911 if this person's non-responsive, and that it's kind of like wearing your Red Cross
Yeah, like a
what do you
medical alert.
medical alert bracelet.
Yeah.
So the dog can carry instructions and medications or contact information without having to go through this person's purse or phone or whatnot.
Your client that you said it's uh, the one that goes into shock is they're diabetic.
No, they're
The one
having
with the EpiPen?
idiopathic anaphylactic responses that's been undiagnosed as to the cause. So we don't know what the cause is, but she has these episodes, and they've been determined to be an anaphylactic response, but they don't know if it's autoimmune or what, but if it's stress induced or what. So they don't know the cause, but they just know that she goes into these episodes. So the dog is being trained to identify prior to the response being so severe that she's immobilized.
What's a reaction like from somebody like your client who comes to you for training and all of a sudden sees a dog is capable of doing something like this?
It's mind blowing. It really
I can
is.
imagine.
They the emotional sort of response to the dog that they love, and I'm not a big fan, and I know I'm gonna get blasted for this. I'm not a big fan of training service dogs for people for exorbitant amounts of money. That's not my gig. Um, I offer training, whether it's obedience or whether it's service dog training. I offer training to people who need it at the cost of dog training. There's no exorbitant amounts of, dogs selling for $30,000 for PTSD response. I already know that scientifically, a dog that is untrained and requires the attention of the handler because it's untrained is just as valuable to a person with PTSD than a dog that's been fully trained. Because when a dog's fully trained, that person can become aware of triggers. Whereas when a dog is untrained and requires more attention from the handler, many of those triggers get missed. So a lot of times an untrained dog is actually more valuable to certain diagnoses than a fully trained dog is. And I don't feel morally comfortable with dogs being sold for exorbitant amounts of money when um, a regular dog, is just as effective.
That makes sense. I just last week they on the radio on the in the car I heard I don't know if they were talking about advertising or whatever it was, but it came up that 80% of households North America, so I don't know if they're including Mexico, but Canada, United States, 80% of households now have a dog in the house. 80%.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the fastest growing industry in North America is dog training and dog I don't know, paraphernalia, but equipment, toys, dog beds, dog food, leashes, collars. Dog equipment is a massively expanding industry. People are substituting dogs for children. It's just a fact.
Yeah, I guess it also goes to show the relationship and the connection, like we talked about earlier, with people and their dogs. Because um, I think it's. I mean, we touched on this earlier, but I think it's also another scientific fact that a few minutes of petting each day reduces your cortisol levels.
Yes, 100%. And this, that my mom had Alzheimer's and passed away of Alzheimer's. Um, and we were always terrified that she would run away. She would disappear, as many people with dementia and Alzheimer's do. They get confused, they leave. I always, when my mom was sick, I always had a tracking dog ready to go in case she wandered off in the night. You know what I mean? I just, how many old folks homes and elderly healthcare facilities for the elderly um, lose people more than you
Yeah,
think.
and also people with Down syndrome, they tend to wander
Yes.
off a lot.
Yes,
It's
children
pretty
with
common.
autism who are flight risks. I know
Yeah.
I have clients who have children who are flight risks where we train the dog to track simply because they know that their children are flight risks, and there isn't anything that they can do. If that child has an opportunity to go, they're gone. And having a dog in the home that knows the child, that isn't going to harm the child. I mean, with all due respect, you know, calling the police and having a dog that's an apprehension dog tracking a child is a little bit risky, right? Some agencies require dogs be taught how to track in muzzle because, God forbid, the dog tracks that person. He's 9 times out of 10 tracking a violent suspect, and now all of a sudden he has to track a child or an Alzheimer's patient
It's a
or
good point. I
someone with
never thought
dementia.
of it that way. because the dog
Absolutely.
is taught to track a bad guy. So when he gets there, usually there's a bite at
I
the end
bet
of it.
100%. So, having dogs trained that are family members, any dog, I mean, obviously certain dogs are better than others, certain characteristics are better than others, but, having a dog that will track a child that they know that they aren't going to harm, that they love tremendously to begin with, at your disposal immediately when that child immediately is known to go missing, or that adult that's known to go missing. You don't need to wait 24 hours for a missing persons report to be filed. Boom, you go. It's a family member. Bang, you're on your way. So when my mom was sick, I always had a tracking dog ready to go, and I was prepared. I had a go bag with a harness and a leash, long line, ready to go at all times. If I got a call from my dad at 4 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, she's gone, I'm there. So yeah, there's so many things. We had this lovely lady who, young children, diagnosed. This woman was diagnosed with MS, and her mobility was suffering. And they had a dog, and it was big enough that it was strong enough to be utilized. She wasn't a very large woman to begin with, and we taught this dog to assist her in getting up and walking and sitting down. And if she fell, how to get up using the dog to help her. If she was on a flat surface, she just couldn't get up. She was too far from a chair, a stool, a couch. She couldn't get up. So having this dog position itself so with the harness where she could grab on and lean on this dog, and this dog would brace himself to allow her to get to her knees so she could get up, call for help. So many things. So many things. It's not just their ability to smell, people with chemical imbalances, whether it be anything, cancers, things like that. Yes, that's phenomenal. But even just their physical ability. Look at seeing eye dogs. What an incredible asset where the dog's not using his nose at all. I mean, there's so many avenues where dogs are helping people. They've helped us survive ice ages. They've helped us survive, hunting excursions when we were hunter-gatherers. Now they're helping us live in cities and helping us when we're sick. There's no way that you can't say that they're angels, honestly.
I remember you mentioned seeing eye dogs. I remember as a little kid, a little boy, running around the neighborhood. There was a lady, she was blind, and she had a service dog. She had a seeing eye dog. And I remember as a little kid, I was elementary school. I was probably 10, 12, 13 years old. I probably remember seeing her for years. Maybe I was probably 7, 8 years old when I remember seeing her. And when I was a little kid, I mean, this was way beyond me. I mean, it was way beyond my scope at that time. I thought it was amazing to watch this lady in our neighborhood. I knew where she lived and everything. And I remember that dog, I remember watching her with this dog stop at the sidewalk, waiting for the light to turn, crossing the street, going into the store with her, picking up groceries, coming back out.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating today. But as a kid, when I saw that, I was mesmerized by it.
Well, I
It's
think
just
I saw
very, very difficult to comprehend.
Absolutely. I mean, the things that these dogs are capable of. I recently saw a video with a person in a wheelchair, and this Malinois was pushing this guy on the street with his head, pushing the wheelchair because he didn't have a power wheelchair. And the dog would just push him along and just keep pushing until he told him to do otherwise. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. I also, even, do you think that when you train a dog to be a service dog of or whatever capacity, the dog that you mentioned was there to help the lady if she fell or something as a brace to get up.
Yep.
Do you think that the dog, how should I say this? The dog's obviously been trained to do a job. Do you think the dog makes a connection between it's just a job and this is what I was taught to do? Or do you think the dog actually understands the purpose of that job? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I'm trying to separate it because obviously he knows what he's supposed to do. Do you think
Mhm.
the dog understands why he's doing it? Like
Not
that he's
initially, not initially, but I do believe that they eventually get it. I do believe that they have the mental capacity to actually understand. There's no question. And the reason I say that is because I've experienced personally through my clients dogs that have reacted without training in ways to, in their own untrained way, acknowledge that something is going on with these people. I just, why would they care if they didn't understand? You know what I mean? Like in the obedience realm, just like straight pet people, you know, you have dogs that people come with their dogs that say, well, my dog's reactive to other dogs. Okay. Well, it may have stemmed from an incident where a dog barked at their dog and the dog felt like, oh, I'm going to bark back. Well, now maybe that person slipped a disc, maybe fell, maybe just got worried that their dog is reacting aggressively towards somebody's dog. Well, now every time that person sees a dog coming down the sidewalk, that person now is going to get internally agitated, whether it be through stress, whether it be anxiety, whether it be whatever it is, anger, it doesn't matter. Now that dog looks to that handler and says, why are you nervous? Well, what's the common denominator? There's a dog coming down. Every time a dog walks towards me, you get stressed. Maybe I feel compelled as a dog to defend you. And then you see these dogs, they become reactive because their handlers can't control their emotions. And it's so subtle because the dogs can pick up on these things like a lie detector. You know, they're so in tune to you that they feel compelled to assist in the only way they know how, even if it's unwarranted or unwanted. And I think that, going back to your original statement, initially, do they know? Probably not. It's a behavior that they're taught. But when they have an opportunity to acknowledge why they're doing what they're doing through repetition and consistency and environmental awareness, how many times have you heard about dogs waking people up in their sleep because there's a fire, but they don't have a fire alarm or smoke detector? How many times have you heard dogs waking people up? But that wasn't a trained response. The dog just did whatever he needed to do because he sensed danger and alerted his family. So I do believe that they eventually learn. I do believe that dogs have the mental capacity to identify, acknowledge, and indicate in whatever way they know how, even if they're not trained.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess it's all these little things that strengthen the bond between, human and dog. You just mentioned waking them up in the middle of the night if there's a fire or something like that. Have you heard of dogs waking up people from nightmares, specifically like PTSD service members? Have you ever heard of that?
Not directly. I've not experienced it directly, but I would absolutely believe that that would be not a strange occurrence. I mean, if 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 I just yell for no reason, my dog's going to come and inspect what's going on. If I want to startle my wife because I think it's funny and she comes into the room and I want to scare her. If I do that, you see it online all the time. Dogs running around. What's going on? What happened? Why are you yelling? So if somebody's having a night terror, uh, you know, uh, something playing in their head during a nightmare, and they're acting abnormal to the dog's going to investigate. And if he doesn't like what he sees, just like dogs waking up people because they smell smoke, they're going to like do what they can to get your attention. So I'm not surprised by that in the least. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said that they experienced it with an untrained dog. I absolutely see that as being not outside the realm of capabilities.
Yeah, I think there's actually programs though that people train dogs for that reason.
Sure, sure, 100%.
Specifically for PTSD and service members who
Yeah.
are inflicted with this,
Yes,
this issue of these things reoccurring through dreams, obviously.
100%. I mean, even when a person is awake and they have an episode of hyper anxiety or whatever, and they feel that, a lot of these people, they'll go into the fetal position in the middle of the street. They get a trigger and it affects them and they can't help it. And I'm working a dog today with a client. If he goes to ground, the dog is to apply pressure to him. If he sits on his bum, the dog is to climb into his lap. If he goes into the fetal position, the dog has to step onto his side or chest and apply pressure. I don't know the exact science behind how pressure works, but I know that they sell weighted blankets for people to feel more comfortable. So the dog applying pressure, weight, to an individual who's experiencing an anxiety episode seems to help. And it's we do this all the time.
So I missed a little bit of that. You're training this dog for a specific purpose for this reason?
Yes. Yeah. CPTSD. Client has an issue, and so we're training the dog for two specific behaviors. Um, Social anxiety disorder, or however you want to word it. If somebody approaches and that person, for whatever reason, feels uncomfortable, the dog will position himself between the handler and that person. So anybody approaching that personal space, the dog will automatically move to that side of the person. So it'll leave the heel position would be on the left. If I approach the handler from the right, the dog will then circle to the right and sit to the right, creating a physical barrier between that person and that stranger. I had a young girl who was in a wheelchair, and she was paraplegic. Not paraplegic. She had no control over her extremities, but they would on occasion uh, stretch out in a spasm. And one day they were walking with the wheelchair, and the mother was with the young daughter, and they were going down the road downtown Toronto, and her arm would extend out, like she would spasm and her arm would extend out, and somebody accidentally walked into her, and she's obviously not physically able to work out or move. So, her physical strength is very weak, and she dislocated her shoulder. So they said to me, can you train the dog to walk on the left side of the wheelchair so that the dog creates a barrier, a physical barrier, so that when this left arm would spasm and protrude from the wheelchair, that there was no likelihood that somebody would accidentally bump into her and cause her to dislocate her shoulder again. And we basically trained the dog to heel next to the wheelchair. Nothing spectacular, but still providing a service. So yeah, it's pretty amazing how they assist in so many ways, both physically, through their olfactory system, through just pressure, through companionship. My God, there's just endless amounts of assistance that dogs provide people.
Yeah, what I find fascinating, I mean, all that it's amazing, but I think beyond that, what I find fascinating is the, let's say, connection that the human develops with the dog. I think to me, that's what I find fascinating. I mean, what the dog is capable of doing and how you're capable of training it is amazing in itself. But I think, I mean, it's a relationship at the end of the day. It really is.
Do you want to
between.
know? Do you want to hear something crazy? Do you know what the number one, I feel anyway, I experience, you know what the number one uh, complaint or request for assistance that I get from most civilian dog trainers or dog handlers, like dog owners? You know what the number one thing that we have to work on? It's going to blow your mind. Separation anxiety from the dog.
I'm actually not. Oh yeah, I'm actually not surprised. I mean,
The dogs can't live without their owners. The dogs go crazy when their owners have to go to work. The dogs go crazy if they, not crazy in a bad sense, but they
I
just
understand what you're saying.
they
Yeah.
can't handle the person having to put the dog away because they have a guest and they've not trained the dog in obedience, so they got to put the dog in a crate while they're having family over or whatever because the dog's not properly obedience trained or whatnot. The dogs develop separation. You talk about a bond between an animal and a human, and we talk about how the humans require assistance from the dog. And here we have the dogs requiring assistance from the handlers because the dogs are developing separation anxiety. Isn't that wild?
Isn't there? Isn't there? I don't know if it's a scientific. I don't know if it goes that far into it, but the human connection that the dog feel the connection that the dog feels to the human, I believe it's a chromosome thing. And I think there was a study. I don't. Maybe you've never heard of it. Maybe you have, but I think it was a study at one of the universities in the States, and they actually identified that dogs become hypersocial around humans. And I think that's what you're talking about is that separation anxiety. I think it's an actual scientific thing.
I I
I don't remember
feel
the study. I don't know if it was Princeton or Harvard. I don't
I,
remember.
I would venture to question because you also have dogs that have been developed for centuries to assist humans via independence and guarding of livestock. And those dogs aren't supposed to develop a high social relationship with humans. So livestock guardians like the Great Pyrenees, the Central Asian Shepherd, all of these dogs work independently of humans in the mountains, protecting livestock from predators and thieves. Those dogs develop a bond with the livestock. And
Really?
I feel like it's a it's a genetic component, possibly a chromosome that was developed in the adaptation or evolution of wolves protecting their territory and protecting the rest of their pack. You know, it's often seen when a rogue alpha wolf who's been expelled from his pack goes looking for new territory and he comes across another wolf pack, the female wolf will fight alongside the male to defend him from this intruder. So I think that it could be a chromosome, it could be a genetic component, but I believe it's a survival adaptation. And I think that the correlation between hunter gatherer and hunter scavenger lends itself to that we become the dog's pack. We become the dogs, and our home becomes their territory, and our home and the water and food that we provide and the shelter and the affection that we provide becomes a resource, and the dogs naturally guard that resource. And I think that hyper social connectivity is often because wolves were pack animals, and I think that the human family resembles that pack in a relatively similar fashion.
Where do you think we are in terms of the development, the relationship between human and dog, in the sense that years ago, as far as I know, dogs were mainly used as a tool, whether it would be on a farm, whether it be whatever it was. I mean, there was so many examples of dogs being tools. Um, I think eventually that relationship between human and dog became closer and closer.
Mm-hmm.
And we started using dogs as tools, but in a different way, like we just been talking about, with a bond, with helping with PTSD, with helping with anxiety, like you just said, with all
Sure.
these different. Where do you think we are? Where do you think we're still gonna, like? Do you think we've reached that limit and we know all we can when it comes to dogs and the human connection?
I don't believe that we know everything about dogs in the sense of training. I think we're still developing training protocols or training systems that advance. But to your point about the connection between humans, and I think knowing you for as long as I have, you're going to appreciate this. And I sense I'm going to see a smile from your face when you hear this. I believe that dog training today is leaving what we knew before about the connection between humans and dogs. And I think with the understanding of scientific studies like Pavlovian theory and operant conditioning and how that science affects dogs, I believe that we are losing the connection in modern dog training rather than gaining them. And with obstacle work that we do in developing, so my system that I've been able to create based on the mentors and trainers that I've worked with. I've developed this system called the TROT system, and the acronym is TROT: trust, respect, obligation, and teamwork. And through working dogs on obstacles, not agility courses, but things that stress dogs out, one of my mentors, someone that you know, John Narditsky, said, "You never know a dog truly until you put pressure on them." I'm sure you've heard him say that before, and I've taken that literally to heart, and I use it in the obstacle course training where I don't know what's going to cause a dog to disobey his owner on the street, in a field, at a park. So I create obstacles that induce stress and refusal and different types of avoidance behaviors. And I use those obstacles to implement the expectation of control. And I think that when a dog says, "I'm afraid of this obstacle, I don't understand it," and I say, "That's okay. You can be afraid of it. You and I are going to accomplish and conquer this together." We build a bond by working together, by me assisting. Some of these obstacles are designed for dogs to fail, that they can't do it. And I need to hold them, support them, cradle them, help them achieve and surpass or control or complete this task with my assistance, because they physically can't do it by themselves. That creates the bond. And I think that type of concept, which in the old days, every dog training club, law enforcement facility that had dogs, military facility, had obstacle courses. And today we see a pull away from those obstacles, and now behavior, the dog's providing a behavior, is the obedience, as opposed to today, sit down, stay, come, heel is obedience. When
Yeah.
to me, the definition of obedience is, I've given you a task. I know you don't want to, but the fact that you do it because I've compelled you to, and because you trust me and you respect me and you're obligated to perform for me, now I have teamwork. And that is something that in our advancement of dog training, we're actually losing the component of connection with the dog, because we're treating dogs as a science experiment and not as a animal capable of love and affection and dedication to one.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think there's going to be some people that may listen to what you said and not fully comprehend it, only because, I mean, it's one of those things that you have to almost live in real life with a dog to understand that connection.
And you can't do it online.
Right. You can't. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. And I think I would probably go as far as saying that there's a lot of dog trainers that don't even make that connection and understand what you're doing with that. And just to try to put in a little bit of context, you're saying that sit, stay down, heel is just a way for you to communicate with your dog to do those other things.
Sure.
And then you're pushing the dog. When I say pushing, I don't mean physically. I just mean you're getting the dog to do what he didn't think he was capable of. And by doing that, that's where your bond is coming from with the dog. Is that?
Absolutely. So let me word it to you like this. If I say, to an average person, define what you would believe obedience would be in the realm of dog work, dog training. Most people would say sit, down, stand, come, heel. That's the first. Sit, down, those are the ones that are going to come to mind first. How does sit and down differ from roll over and give paw? They're parlor tricks. They're a behavior that is predominantly exchanged for a reward of some sort, whether it's praise, whether it's food, whether it's a toy. You give me speak on command, and I give you your toy. You give me a paw, I give you a treat. That's not the definition of obedience. That's a communication and an exchange, right? And I think that the bond between human and dog goes way beyond that, way beyond that. I don't believe that a dog that wakes you up in the middle of the night because he smells smoke is exchanging waking you up because he thinks he's going to get a treat.
That's a great point.
So for all of those trainers who have scientifically broken down the dog to Pavlovian theory and, operant conditioning and all of these scientific determinations of comprehending a dog's behaviors and movements and idiosyncrasies, I don't buy it. There's a component to it, but it's not the end all and be all of dog training. And that's why I believe that we are leaving or furthering ourselves from the relationship between us and the dogs in exchange for bribing and luring dogs to provide behaviors that are not conducive to our relationship.
When you talk about obstacles, now I understand why you're doing it, having been around the dog world for many years and associating with dog people such as yourself and a few other people that we know. So I understand the value of obstacles and why they're done. If a dog is coming to you, obviously you're going to incorporate that into a military dog or a police dog because there's so much value there. And just to break it down really simply before I make my point, my understanding is that you're basically you're building that relationship, you're building that trust, like your trust system. Trust is the first word. You're basically getting that dog exposed to real life situations where they may or may not be comfortable, but they trust you enough to do what you're asking of them.
Right.
So I understand how it makes sense in a military or police aspect because the dog is going to be exposed to so much and he has this huge or there is a huge need for that relationship with the dog's handler. When you're working a dog as a service dog is the wrong word because they're all service dogs. But if you're working a dog like the one you were just mentioning with the lady who needs help to get up sometimes, or the person who needs something detected if they're going to go into shock, is it still necessary for you to do that obedience obstacles, let's say, with the dog?
Yes, and I'll explain to you why. I can't determine, nobody can determine what would potentially cause a dog to become so distracted from its job that would cause that dog to fail that person in their time of need. So, having said that, dogs sleep on the ground, they play on the ground, they
Correction,
poop.
correction. My dog is on the bed sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. But generally speaking, they go to the bathroom outside, they play, they chase a ball, they
Yeah.
pee, they poo, they replicate, they, you know what I mean? Everything is done on the ground. And I feel like, how can I know what could potentially cause that dog to either refuse or not provide the behavior? What could potentially cause that dog to have that obligation be disrupted? I don't know what it could be. It could be a squirrel. Could you imagine a seeing eye dog affected by a squirrel? That could be catastrophic, right? Can you imagine somebody who suffers from I have a young lady who suffers from a partial paralysis in one of her legs. She has mobility, but she doesn't have feeling, so she falls a lot. So she can't really plant her feet and have sensation in both feet to brace herself. If that dog is there to help her mobility and help her support herself, if that dog chases a cat, that could be catastrophic. So the obstacles are a way to force the dog into refusal for some reason, whether it's because the obstacle is too difficult, whether the dog doesn't feel that they're capable. I don't know what could potentially cause that dog to fail on the street. So I'm going to create an absolute nightmare of an obstacle course where that dog is completely focused, completely given itself to the need of that handler and that dog to complete those tasks. It's the only way I can proof my work. And I feel that the obstacles are the only way to create obstacles in that dog's working environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're doing it the way I'm thinking of it. You're basically proofing that dog the same way you would for a military dog, just different things, but the process is the same.
A physical obstacle is the same as a mental barrier or mental obstacle. So regardless of what that obstacle is, the dog needs to be able to provide the service as a service dog. So absolutely a mobility service dog, anxiety, any dog that has to perform a task for me must be able to perform under duress on the obstacle course. It's not an agility course. It's an obstacle course. It's a psychological obstacle. It's a physical obstacle. It's a barrier in which the dog is struggling to perform the task given to it. And through mental fortitude, commitment to its handler, trust, respect, and obligation, that dog will perform. And that's the only way I can guarantee, to the best of my abilities, a dog to be reliable in its service.
Can you, I understand exactly what you're saying. Again, being around dogs and various different capacities, I understand exactly what you're saying. But can you give me an example as to what the difference is between an agility course and an obstacle course? I know you just basically broke it down right there, but for somebody listening, somebody who's got a new dog or getting a dog, somebody who's looking to build a relationship with this dog, help them understand what's the difference. Like, why are they getting value out of an obstacle course as opposed to an agility course? What's the difference between them?
An agility course is something that the dog does as a game. It's something that the dog does for fun. It's a game that you play with your dog so that the dog performs those tasks as quickly as physically possible, because an agility course is often timed when you compete. So it's a timed event. It's something that the dog must enjoy doing because it's fun. So let's say you have a mobility service dog and that person is waiting at the bus stop for this specific vehicle to come, and that person may be in a wheelchair, and that bus arrives, and the suspension of that bus has to lower in order for that person to get on. And now you have this high compressed air explosion, and this machine drops down, and these doors automatically open, and you hear the thud of the door. A dog that is weak-nerved, a dog that is not exposed to operating under stress or duress, may look at that machine, that transit vehicle, and go, "What the hell was that? I'm not climbing into that. I'm not going there. There's just no way." But a dog that has been desensitized through an obstacle course isn't going to jump into this bus enthusiastically. It's going to obediently step in and provide the service because it's not a game. It's part of the work. Whereas an agility course is a game, and it's typically a timed event, and it's something that the dog does in an incredibly enthusiastic and athletic manner, which would be counter productive for somebody who's struggling with mobility or is restricted to a wheelchair, or they may get pulled off their chair or pulled off their feet, because it's a completely different element.
So would you say that the obstacle course, although physically challenging, is more mental for the dog?
Always.
Right. Yeah.
Dogs that, we get a lot of times people come to me and say, my dog's really nervous, my dog's skittish, my dog is, genetically not from a good breeding program where people have put time and effort and thought into breeding, and these dogs end up in shelters and the dog's terrified of its shadow. Obstacle courses are what's going to help that dog develop trust and respect and obligation for their handler, and the byproduct of those three is teamwork, and through teamwork the dog feels that he's not alone in the world. And helping a dog overcome its fears is therapeutic for many people. It's I tell people all the time, like, I was working a dog today, and this client of mine, lovely lady, but really anxiety ridden about the dog's behavior, and that the dog doesn't get along with the dog that they've had for years, and it's a relatively new dog. We realize that the problems that the dog has with obedience and behavior, and the dog's aggressive through fear because it wasn't a really well thought out planned breeding, that person handling that dog is developing confidence and mental fortitude, and she's not allowed to say, I don't allow her to make excuses for the dog and tell the dog 10 times to step up onto a platform because he doesn't want to. She's needing the leadership role for her own personal reasons, and that dog is a reflection of her needs. So the dog might not be perceived as a great bred, well-bred dog, but that's exactly the dog that she needs to develop her leadership skills, to assist her in her issues.
Yeah, I think there's just so many intangibles when it comes to that connection between human and dog, and I think
you often don't get the dog you want, you get the dog you need. I had
right.
no intention of ever being a dog trainer until I ended up with my dog Bruno, which you remember. He
Of
was the
course.
hardest dog I've ever trained in my life, possibly because I didn't know very much in the beginning, but it
That
caused me
makes
to,
sense too, right?
sure, but it caused me to seek out people who became mentors because of their extreme knowledge, that that by the time I ended up getting a handle on that dog, I could handle most dogs because he was so difficult. I honestly believe that I'm a dog trainer today because of that dog and that dog alone. I had a German Shepherd before him, and I ended up with Bruno as a Corso, and he created the avenue for me to become a dog trainer because of the difficulty I had to control him.
I'm going to push back a little bit
Sure.
on that, because that may be partially true, but I'm going to push back and say that you just have a strong passion for dogs. I think you just love everything about them. I think you love the challenge of them. I think you like getting the most out of them. I think it's a passion. So I think perhaps Bruno's the one that brought out that passion, maybe. I don't know. But when we first met, you didn't have Bruno yet. You had a
Right.
shepherd, and you were
Yep.
already seeking, how do I get this dog better? How do I train this dog? How do I work this out? So I think it I'm just giving you my perspective. I think it was both. I think you have a passion. You did have a passion. I think you still have a passion. I think it grew over time. But I think Bruno's probably the one that brought that out. He's probably the one that said,
He
"Let
may
me
have
figure
been
this
he
sucker
may have
out."
been the catalyst to start this directive for me, but if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have, you know, gone as far as I did to, and you know, even with your assistance, to meet certain people in my career that helped me tremendously. So yeah,
How much? How much?
I'm forever grateful to those who have assisted me both in connecting me with the right people, and as well as the dogs that taught me as much as people have.
I have a question for you. How much do you think? So there's a lot of dog trainers out there, and some people do it because it's a cool thing to do. It's trending. I'm going to make money at it. Whatever reason you have. But I believe there's another element to it, and it's what we just mentioned, and that's passion. How much do you think that passion contributes to being a good dog trainer? I mean, obviously, there's the knowledge that you have to get certain things out of a dog. But at some point, I think there has to be an element of you just loving what you do.
I'm going to tell you this. It's very unfortunate that this industry also attracts a lot of really characteristically poor individuals. There are a lot of people who do not do a good service to the dogs that they work, whether it be because of their ego, whether it be because they think that it's macho. You know, lots of people over my career up to yesterday reach out to me inquiring about where to get started in dog training, and the vast majority of them want to start in protection, which is another service that dogs provide, protection. And every time somebody asks me that they want to get involved in protection training dogs, that throws up 100 red flags for me. Because if protection is your main focus, and not the communication and bond that's created with a dog through true obedience, and understanding the dog and having the dog provide services beyond the cool stuff, which is, listen, you post a video of a dog locating an invasive species of insect egg, you're going to get 2 or 3 likes on social media. You provide a video on social media of a dog flying over the roof of a car, leaping onto the roof of a a garage and attacking someone and immobilizing them, and then with a command or a whistle, the dog lets go and comes back, you're going to get thousands of likes. What's trendy, exactly as you stated, what sells on social media is what scares me about this industry, because it attracts the wrong people. I love the fact that I can train a dog to locate narcotics. I can train a dog to track. I can train a dog to find a lost child. I love the fact that I can train a dog to help somebody get up or walk or detect an anaphylactic response occurring before it occurs. That is my passion. And the fact that I can train a dog to do protection as well, and know the difference between protection and sport work, that's the last thing. Anybody can make a dog angry. Statistically speaking, I think it's 98% of all recorded dog bites on humans in North America are by dogs that have never been trained to bite people. So being a protection dog trainer is probably the lowest ranking accolade that I think I would put forth. That's
Well,
the difference.
being a dog person, I certainly appreciate that. I actually remember something that for me, this wasn't that long ago, actually. It was just a few months ago, and you'll remember the story. But I remember there was probably hundreds of people where we were, and I don't think anybody took a second look. And for me, I was mesmerized by it, and I called you. And I was at the mall, and it was, I think it was just after Christmas, and I was at the mall, and I saw two people, male and female. They were together, and they were walking their Dobermans, and they were inside the mall, not outside in the parking lot. They were inside the mall, in the hallways and in the stores, and these dogs were extremely well behaved. You can obviously tell that there was a connection between the handler and the dog. I mean, everything was just spot on. It was just, and I remember looking, and my eyes were just there. Like, who cares about the mall and the stores and everything else? Like, my eyes were there. I'm a dog person, so I was gravitated to that. They were speaking with somebody. I didn't approach them, but I remember calling you and asking you if you had trained two Dobermans, male and female, blah blah blah. And you said, I'm not sure. I trained a few Dobermans, but I'm not sure if these dogs I've trained or whatever. So anyway, we got off the phone. I ran into these people again, and I asked them, I said, really, really appreciate how obedient your dogs are. I may ask you who helped you work your dogs. And they said, oh, somebody just north of the city. His name's Tony. And I said, Tony Pallotta? They're like, yeah, you know him? So for me, I appreciate that. Like, it's just one of those things that I see it, I know the time, I know the connection, I see the value in it, and I just love it. Like, I like seeing that.
No, it's an amazing thing to see that bond, but trying to keep it on the target of this podcast, I just think that I can't think of any other animal, any other person that does more, or people or machinery or whatever, that does more for assisting people than dogs do. So that's an amazing gift that they give, and they give it wholeheartedly when it's done right.
And I think it goes back and forth, because obviously the humans give something to that animal as well.
Of course, they give that dog meaning. They give that dog purpose, and coming from a European background where I've had, growing up, friends who had dogs locked up in their backyard for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Maybe the dog went out for walks a couple of times a year. that was always heartbreaking for me. It just didn't bode well with me as a child. Um, yeah, it's an amazing thing. I have a cousin in Italy who trains dogs to find truffles, which is probably the most expensive food additive on the planet, these specific truffles. And he's made a fortune at it, and he's good at it. Um, it's incredible. Like, there isn't anything that they're not capable of doing, whether it be military, law enforcement, um, service to people who've been diagnosed with diseases, locating leaking pipelines, arson detection, invasive species. I mean, the list is just unending. Bed bugs for hotels, like, just it's crazy. It never ends.
So even outside of things that you would train a dog to do as a service, or let's call them a tool at that point, where the dog is working as a tool to accomplish something, just inadvertently, unintentionally, and by coincidence, dogs, people who own dogs already get the benefit of. So I think it's, you probably know better than me, but I think it's, dog owners are 4 times more likely to get daily physical activity than someone who doesn't own a dog. So right off the bat, you know,
Benefit.
yeah, there's a benefit to it.
Yep.
And then we already touched on all those other things, with petting a dog lowers your cortisol levels, which obviously is your stress hormones. We touched on that. It lowers your blood pressure. That's another, I don't think we talked about that, but that's another just unintentional benefit of having a dog. It lowers your blood pressure, your reduced cholesterol, all these things that benefit people, even if you're not using your dog as a tool for a specific thing. So many benefits that people get just having a dog and being around a dog, whether we pick it up or not, it's there.
100%. 100%. There's no way that you could not. I mean, in my group classes that I teach, I can't tell you how many times in an hour, let alone in a 4-hour session with multiple groups, how many people just you catch it all the time. You're observing the class and they're looking down at their dog and they smile. The dog's just sitting there. He's got this dumb look on his face, looking up. What's up? And they're smiling. And they're petting their dog, and they're waiting for the next instruction, and they're just sitting there waiting, and they're inadvertently petting their dog without even knowing. And they're smiling. You're talking to them and you're explaining stuff to them, and they're smiling, and part of their brain is somewhere else. And it's that physical contact with the dog that just does that. What other, it's just insane.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I wanted to ask you about if you could maybe cite an example of either a student you've had or one of your workers or volunteers, a co-op student, and maybe cite a very similar example where you noticed them working with the dog and it affected them. I'm not talking about they got results when they taught the dog to sit and the dog sit for them and they were happy about it. I'm talking about someone that, I mean, you mentioned a couple of people that have come in with anxiety and they brought the dog there for that specific purpose. I'm talking about somebody that wasn't brought in for a specific purpose. I'm talking about maybe a volunteer or a student or a child or somebody that came in and that experience changed their life. Does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, 100%. So without naming names, I can name a bunch, but one in particular, who suffered from social anxiety disorder, and via the dogs is now able to communicate and instruct large numbers of people, close to 100 people, on any given day instruct individuals that are older and in a position of authority. And this is someone who didn't like being in even medium-sized crowds. So yeah, absolutely. I've seen it a million times. And yeah, I couldn't be prouder of how this culture, this um, dog community, the dogs themselves have helped this particular individual and many others, many others. Um, in Europe, in the protection sports, one of the biggest complaints is young people are not getting involved in training dogs for, you know, protection sports and police work, and we need young people because it's a physical requirement. And I'm always looking out for respectful, humble young people to get them involved with dogs. And one of the things that I believe should almost, like they say that maybe, physical fitness has been faltering in public school, right? And in elementary schools, and
It's a
that there
shame.
should be a bigger push for that stuff, right? Well, one of the things that I believe should be part of the curriculum is getting young people to work with young dogs, because it teaches compassion, discipline, leadership skills. Like, these are things that you don't need to be on a contact team sport to develop just by working with dogs. So I think young people would benefit tremendously from being mentored with somebody who can help them train dogs and learn leadership skills and compassion and patience. Dogs try your patience. How many kids today don't don't have patience? They can't self-regulate their emotions when the dog is obstinately, you know, doing what it wants because it's had no training before. This is a phenomenal component to the development of young people.
Yeah, it's actually a good point, even especially timing wise, because now, being 3-4 years removed from COVID, we're hearing all kinds of stories with kids who were isolated for whatever it was, 12, 18, 24 months, with no benefits of socially
Oh,
interacting with other kids at school. And there's so many behavioral issues and anxiety issues. And I mean, it's been talked about, highly documented, that therapists are overwhelmed right now with young people.
and
You know,
how many dogs were purchased during COVID? People were reaching out for social interaction with someone, so they all got dogs. The story tells itself.
yeah, there should be. I mean, I think it's fairly well known, but I really think that there should be a little bit more education when it comes to this exact topic, and the connection between human and dog, the benefits of having a dog, working a dog, training a dog, being around a dog, hiking with a dog. Something as simple as just hiking with a dog. It's awesome.
Yep. No, for sure. It gets people out and about, and people love talking about their kids. They also love talking about their dogs. So, you know, it's it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm really glad we had this chat, because normally when we talk dogs, we're talking about, you know, other elements, whether it's, a certain issue with a dog or a problem dog or a certain new obstacle or something like that. And the the connection between man and dog sometimes just gets overlooked because we're around them all the time. So it's just, I mean, for me, it's just not something I tend to think about on a daily basis, because, I've been around dogs forever. I really enjoy them. And you probably see it a lot more than me, because you have clients and you get to pick that up. So it's I think it's really valuable to, to have a conversation. Hopefully somebody picks something up off it.
Absolutely. The emotional benefits of having a dog is it goes without saying. There's anybody who's struggling in life with anything, there's so many benefits to having a dog that I think that it's you can't even count how many benefits there are.
Is there anything that you wanted to add to this conversation that I may not have brought up or we haven't discussed?
No, I think the most important thing is to bring awareness to the fact that they can assist in many ways, humans, and the benefits of even, you know a dog needing help from a human benefits the human. It's just it's almost a one-way street where the dogs are just constantly giving no matter how much we give back. They're still helping us when we help them. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And for people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, um, medical diagnoses of any type, there's almost always a benefit that the dog can provide, and that's I think that's what gives me my passion. It's there's just no limit. I don't think we figured it out yet.
Now that you said that, I just have a real quick story. I don't know if you knew this guy or not. I mean, when you and I started hanging out a little bit, and um, I'm not sure if you knew, but did you know Mike Kindry? No, maybe not. Name doesn't ring a
Yes,
bell. You did.
yes, yes. I remember his name. Yes,
Okay.
he was
So
diagnosed, wasn't he?
yeah, he passed away from
Yes,
cancer.
that's right. I
So
remember.
Mike had and
An American
he
Bulldog.
yeah, he had an American Bulldog, and then he had a smaller uh bully, like an old bully. Is that what they're
Mhm.
called?
Yep,
Is that what
an
they're called?
oldie.
An oldie, yeah. So he had an oldie. His name was Boomer, and then he had Brutus, was an American Bulldog. And when Mike was doing his treatments, his chemo treatments, he did them for some time. But I remember when Mike was doing his treatments, the thing he looked forward to when he was in between treatments and he had his break and he was well enough physically, he would go work his dogs. Like he would go train his dogs. And he would literally drive for hours, sometimes to go down to John's or whatever it was. And I remember him telling me, because I remember being in the car with him and traveling with him. Um, and he just looked forward to being with his dogs. And he actually had Margot, which was his wife, bring the dogs to the hospital. Like they brought them into the hospital. I mean, they were well behaved, and he had some obedience training on them, and they would listen. They were under control, but they made special provisions for him, and he wanted his dogs. Like he said, I want my dogs. So I really think that stretched out his life a little bit, because I mean, he was sick for some time. Great guy, and he was the same thing. He loved dogs, and he loved his two dogs. But when you said that, it just came to mind.
It goes without saying, man. I mean, you talk to people who have dogs, and they're just enamored by them, and it doesn't surprise me that in a person's time of need, sometimes man's best friend is man's best friend. It's
Yeah,
just the way it
it's
is.
true. I can't believe we've been chatting for over an hour. I mean, that phrase never came up, man's best friend.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, there's so many examples of exactly why that saying is so true. So Mike, rest his soul. He was a great guy, and I mean, he was a perfect example of it.
You know,
But Anyway, I'm gonna. Are you good if I leave your info
Sure.
in our our your contact info, a working canine, a link
Yes.
to your site, so
Sure.
people can see what you do, follow you, and and hopefully pick something up off of this conversation, your knowledge, your info, and I always say, I mean, if it reaches one person and it makes a difference, and somebody gets value out of a dog or their dog, then the world is a little bit of a better place today than it was yesterday.
100%. 100%. Thank you for this opportunity, Al.
No, thank you, Tony. I really appreciate you coming on and giving up some time for us to chat about dogs and people and the connection between them. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.